Welcome to the Millennium Marriage Podcast,
where we discuss practical tools and insights into the joys and challenges of marriage. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode here. We're going to revisit one of our most important, we believe to be one of our most important elements in relationship and marriage, and that is communication.
Yep.
We really want to focus on some things. We weren't able to touch on everything on the last episode. So we are going to give you some more today.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a recap from the great LaToya on Communication 101 Part 1.
Yeah. So we're going to give you guys a brief recap. And I say brief because if you want the details, I'm going to need you to go back and listen to Communication 101 Part 1 so that you can really get into it. But just a quick recap. So what we talked about was communication style, being aware of your communication style. Are you passive? Are you aggressive, passive aggressive, or assertive? Because that makes a difference in how you communicate with your partner or anyone else you're in relationship with, is being able to identify what style you are, what style they are, and how you work together. And then we talked about perspective and perception. We talked about our perception not always being the reality and really looking at the other person's perspective to get a better understanding of what they are trying to communicate with you. And then the third point was to humble yourself. It's difficult to, progress in communication and improve in that area when you're not really willing to look at yourself and identify, okay, how can I improve? What areas can I work on? And not point fingers at the other person. So those are the 3 points that we really delved into in the first communication episode. So again, go back and listen to that if you haven't already. And today we're going to get a little deeper into it, right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to go to Communication 101 Part 2.
Part 2.
And what we're going to do is we're just going to have a continued conversation. We're going to dig a little deeper and see what we can do to improve our communication, our styles, just better our relationships altogether. So I'm going to start it off by throwing out a quick question, and it's, what are your communication expectations? And what do you communicate about? So I guess it's a two-parter, What is it that you expect out of your communication with your partner? And then looking back at it, what is it that you actually communicate about?
Well, so I would say regarding expectations, something we talked about in the last episode, our expectations really come from our experiences, right? So our household, or seeing our parents or significant others or anyone you grew up around, how do they communicate? Because we really learn from our environment. So a lot of times I think our expectations are set on what we've seen, whether it's in the household or even in society. Society says you're supposed to do things a certain way. And I think we all kind of develop our own method, I guess.
Some do. Because some do allow that society to dictate what they're or how they communicate. And I think that leads to some failures sometimes because society can have a very unrealistic idea of how to communicate or what we're supposed to communicate about. And it's like, if you're just going based off of that, it could lead to, missing opportunities to communicate about things that actually are going to better your relationship.
Yeah, I think, society also sometimes has a toxic view on how to communicate with people. I think in our society today, it's all about me. It's all about me getting my point across. It doesn't matter what I have to do, say, how I have to act to get my point across, but you are going to know how I feel, why it's important, and why what I feel is more important than what you feel.
Yeah.
And, unfortunately, I think that dictates a lot of relationships today, not just marital, but, friendships and parental and everything, because everybody's so focused on getting their point across. We're a self-centered society.
Yeah.
So how do we combat that? I think it's definitely a personal journey. Everybody has to really humble themselves, like we talked about last time, right? Humble themselves and figure out not just how to communicate their point, but how to see other people's perspectives. So I don't know. I would say regarding expectations in marriage, I think about what I expected you to communicate to me, and vice versa, right? So I mean,
I'm going to chime in and say what you think about. So this is always a big thing with the male and the female.
Right.
Is the women think the man is supposed to do something, but the man never knows that the woman wants the man to do it. So that's where the communication comes in. Are we able to, and that leads right into the second part of the question. What are you communicating about? Are you communicating the things that you want? The what you want your spouse or your significant other to do, or certain things that you need, because some of it is a need.
Yeah.
And are we communicating that, or are we just expecting that person to just know?
Yeah.
Read our
you
minds.
Didn't know you're supposed to
Read
know.
Our minds. You telepathically told me to take the trash out.
Yep.
Well, the trash is still sitting there.
Yes, I think that is so important. And I think that's an ongoing process, especially when you've been with someone for a while. Then it's like, oh, well, you already know me. You already know that I want this done. Well, but they also have things that are on their mind that they want to get done too. So it could get lost in that, so it's really important to communicate those things. And I think that's a work in progress. Like, it never ends, the work in that area never ends, because we get so comfortable sometimes that we let things go, or we're like, oh, they should know, they'll figure it out. And then there's this animosity that builds up because your needs aren't being met, or your expectations aren't being met, and the other person has no idea.
Yeah. So,
I'm walking around with the attitude, and you're like, what's wrong? You should know what's wrong. No, like, that's not the way it works. And, I say it that way because we've been there. Yeah. We've been there, done that, and every once in a while it creeps back in, so we have to be intentional about how we're communicating our needs, what we communicate about. And then it's different for every couple as well, because like for us, we've been together so long, and we've always been really close. So like, even when we were dating and all of that, like, I knew when you were going to play basketball, you knew when I was going, to volunteer somewhere. We just always kind of were aware of each other's moves throughout the day. And then you have some couples who, I'll see you in the morning when you leave, I'll see you at night when you get home, and I have no idea what you did throughout the day. But if that's not an expectation that was set in their relationship, then maybe it's okay for them. It depends on the relationship, I guess. But I think it's something that you want to be clear about in your relationship with your partner. Like, I don't expect you to tell me everything you ate for lunch, how many times you went and used the bathroom and all that. I mean, sometimes I do want details, y'all. I'm a woman.
That's too much.
You want?
Too much.
I'm just saying. Sometimes, we say, "How's your day?" You're like, "Good." We want the details. The woman wants to hear, "Oh, was everybody cool? Did anybody drive you crazy today?" All that, and the guy's just like, "It was good." So different styles of communication, right? But there are some boundaries. Like, you don't have to tell me every little thing, but things that are relevant to our family, how we're operating, finances, what you have on the schedule versus what I have on the schedule, so that we can all be on one accord. So just find a simple method with your partner to communicate those things that you feel are important, but you each need to know what the other thinks is important.
Right. Yeah. For the men's side, I think we have to be more vulnerable, and I think that's a tough thing for us to do sometimes. The pride and everything in us, and we don't. Some conversations we don't want to have because it makes us vulnerable, and I think we need to open up more and allow ourselves to be vulnerable, because then that takes your communication in your relationship to a whole nother level. So
yeah. And I think that leads to the next question that you had. So if you're not communicating.
Yeah, if you're not communicating certain things with your spouse, ask yourself why, and that leads to that. You know, the male side, it could be because of that, because we don't want to be vulnerable, because we don't want to show. We might look at it like it's a sign of weakness, and we don't want to show that, but we should definitely allow our significant other in to us in that way.
Yeah, it's a sign of strength, really, when you're able to be vulnerable with the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with. This is supposed to be your best friend, your life partner, the person you are in covenant with, that, you know, till death do you part. So you should be able to be vulnerable with each other. You should be able to share those things that make you uncomfortable. Hopefully you're not sharing them with anyone else, right? If you're going to share them with anyone, it should probably be your spouse, you know, and God. You know, if it's something that you're really not comfortable sharing with your spouse, or you don't know how to have that conversation yet, take it to God in prayer and allow him to help you find a way to communicate those things, you know?
That's really good.
I think too, some other reasons why people may not be communicating certain things. I mean, I think there's lots of different reasons, but maybe it's just their upbringing. They don't think it's necessary. You know, like my dad didn't tell my mom, you know, everywhere he needed to go, or, you know, my siblings, you know, it's just the way we communicated growing up. And I'm not saying that as my example, but, you know, everybody has a different experience. So you may not think it's a big deal. So you just don't. And if it bothers your partner, they have to communicate that to you to let you know that it's an issue. Some people just don't know how. You know, yeah, I want to have this conversation with my spouse, or I want to talk to them about this that's bothering me, but I'm just not sure how to bring it up because I don't want them to be offended or hurt or feel like I'm coming at them a certain way. Unfortunately, another reason some people don't communicate with their spouse is because they have something to hide, you know, and you pray that that's not the case, but that's the reality today. And if that's the case, then you have larger problems than not being able to communicate.
Yeah.
Right. So you need to figure out the source of that. Along with that, another reason may be fear of your partner's response or wanting to avoid an argument. I think another area where there's bigger problems, you know, that need to be addressed, because if there's a fear of a response, that means that there's something deeper in there where you don't trust your spouse enough to respect the way you're feeling or to understand the way you're feeling. So there may be some trust issues there. There may be some just fear based off of old relationship experiences. So again, if that's the reason you're not communicating certain things to your spouse, you may need to dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
You know, you may need to establish some terms on your communication, right? So if you are discussing something and things get heated, there's got to be some things established where you say, this is it. Like, bottom line, okay, we get into a disagreement. If the kids are around, cut it out. Like, or leave the room. We do not have these arguments in front of the kids, or, you know, there's no name calling. Like, don't call me out my name. You know what I mean?
And that's the respect in it. So
absolutely.
You can have disagreements, you can have arguments, but there's no reason to be disrespectful to each other. You know, saying things that you know is going to hurt the other person, because you joined in this covenant because you love this person. You don't want to hurt them. But in the heat of an argument, it could be very easy to pull on these things and know that it was a jab. I knew that was gonna hurt, so that's why I said it. So, you know, be mindful of that when you're going into the conversation. Even put in place something like, if it's getting heated, where it's like, all right, listen, that's not what this was about. This isn't where we wanted to take it. Let's put a pin in it. Let's step aside. Let's move away. You know, you get your air, I get my air, and we'll come back. We'll revisit it and move forward the right way, so that you eliminate the argument. Yeah, I think there's other reasons for, you know, for maybe the partner is thinking, I don't want to hurt my partner. You know, maybe the communication that's going to happen you could think it's going to be hurtful. And it might be at the time. It really might be hurtful. It might be a tough conversation that you're having, but in the long run, it's going to bring you closer. It's going to make